Hello and welcome to the round so far for round 10, brought to you by AAMI. I'm Xander McGuire. I'm joined by All-Australian star Kate McCarthy. And tonight, well, we start with Essendon's disaster under the dome. It was all set for them to have a red-hot crack tonight. They came off a stirring win last week. It was 7th v 10th. That was the tail of the tape pre-match. And what unfolded was nothing short of arguably catastrophic for Essendon tonight, Kate.
Yeah, it was a Bulldogs domination, really. 91 points and their lowest score of the season for Essendon, 36 points. And I think we've got some of the statistics that tell the story, but I mean, the difference in the inside 50s, the marks inside 50s, 12 more to the Bulldogs, their efficiency, their tackles in their forward 50 as well. That pressure was really up, the time in forward half as well. The ball spent the majority of the time in the Bulldogs' attacking zone, and I think this game really did just show the gulf between the fifth best team in the competition and where Essendon are at the moment. And then this is just some of the poor defensive efforts. Tim English, he's done himself no favours there. Everyone says anyone over 200 centimetres in football doesn't have a brain. Well, he's tapped that backwards and made a really nice score involvement. But just some of this, the fumbly, misses inside forward 50, and then the ability for the Dogs to just pounce on this. I want you to have a look. There is Kennedy in the screen there. Have a look who gets on the end of this, though, after the turnover. So he's running past about 4 or 5 Essendon players in this time. Then they get the nice turnover and mark inside forward 50 to Aaron Norton, who, if he has a shot from there, it's still pretty elementary. And then guess who pops up on the end of it is Kennedy, and that is Brad Scott's response to that, which I think is fairly warranted for that sort of pressure on a player that's run from the top of 50 inside the goal square and no one's laid a hand on them.
I think for Essendon fans, it feels like one of the most demoralising losses of recent times, both in margin and the manner that it played out. Brad Scott was remarkably positive in the post-match. He sort of pointed to tackling efforts as one of their weaker moments, but was big on the fact that they applied pressure where they could and sort of gave it their effort. Let's have a listen to what he had to say and his characterisation of the clash.
But there's obviously a gap between where they are right now and where we are. Even though I think we've taken some steps forward in the last 4 to 6 weeks, we clearly took a step back tonight. But we never lost sight of where we were at, ever. I mean, we've got a lot of steps forward to match it with the better teams in the competition.
Perhaps one of the most damning elements of this is the way that Bailey Dale, with 0 centre-bounce attendances, was able to rack up a club record 49 disposals.
Yeah, 49 disposals. A lot of those were handball receives because he was able to do this and just roam free. But the thing with Bailey Dale, with a half-back flanker, they can get a lot of the footy, and obviously 49 is a lot of the footy, but the way he uses the ball, he had over 1,000 metres gained. Another player that did that this round is John Noble, who we'll touch on in a minute, but his ability to run free, he's a beautiful user of the football. So if you're going to allow one of the best kicks in the competition to have the ball 49 times, they're going to do some damage. And he did do some damage. He was one of the best for the Dogs, and he did set the new club record and nearly cracked the 50. I think Bailey Williams burnt him for a little bit in the last couple of seconds of the game, and he could have cracked that 50, but it was an outstanding performance by Bailey Dale.
Let's talk Ed Richards as well. He was a standout tonight. He's just signed a 5-year deal with the Dogs, but it's not just tonight that he's come to the fore. He's been exceptional all year.
He has been, and I think we saw it sort of at the start of last year where they needed to find a player to put into the midfield because they did have some injury woes at the start of 24. Ed Richards was the one that earned his spot through the midfield, and since then he has simply not looked back, and he's been afforded many opportunities to play full-time mid this year. 27 disposals tonight, 13 score involvements, 5 tackles and 480 metres gained. And for me, at the moment, Ed Richards is the best player in the competition. He is the most damaging with ball in hand. His ability to, I know his stats, you look at them, they don't jump off the page at you, but every stat that he does have, he makes count, and he makes the opposition pay. His ball use inside forward 50 and his ability to be a true mid that connects with his back line all the way through to his forward line and get on the end of it and kick a couple of goals as well is the thing that impresses me the most about his game. And there's no wonder they've locked him away for 5 years because he's damaging with his disposal. And as I said, best player in the comp for mine, Xander.
Just on a quick note, the Bombers, how much falls on the players? How much falls on the coaching staff?
Oh, I think, as Brad Scott said, I think this is a realistic result for Essendon. If you're an Essendon fan, you've been building nicely. I don't think any of them have got ahead of themselves with where they're at. Obviously, their opponents, they've come up against a very good opponent tonight in the Bulldogs. I don't think it's toys out the cot or disaster sort of territory, but it does show the gap between where they're at and where they want to be. And I think that's how you'd realistically assess this performance.
To another one today that could be, I guess, characterised as a season-defining sort of drubbing. at the Adelaide Oval. Port Adelaide and Geelong, and Port Adelaide were just taken to town by the Cats on their home deck, and the cost arguably is yet to be counted, with a number of very important players going down. This was no less than 2 minutes into the clash. Josh Sinn cops a brutal knee to the hip and sort of rib region. I've spoken to the club. They've said that that's a hip pointer injury and he just goes down straight away. That's not one that you'd like to see. So depending on how the bruising heals up, that could be a couple of weeks on the sidelines. And then the hamstring blow. Jason Horne-Francis chasing Max Holmes, pulls up very sore. Couldn't put any weight through that right leg as he was going off the ground. The club tell me tonight that hopefully he's avoided a tendon issue, which means that he's probably not going to have that 10-week sort of hamstring issue, but scans will confirm the severity of that tomorrow. Jack Bowes goes down with the routine hammy, but then the big one, Patrick Dangerfield, the skipper, who's been in arguably All-Australian form, almost their most important player. Well, he's done his hammy as well, and he's out for the Bailey Smith Cup on Thursday night. Can you believe it? And then Lockie Jones, if there wasn't enough carnage in the first half, he was the 5th player to go down with a game-ending injury, the 4th hamstring. Arguably, I mean, you'd say unprecedented numbers for hamstrings in a game.
Well, it's Stringgate, isn't it? That's what we're calling this game. That is a huge number, and it's interesting. Dangerfield, so this is his 5th straight season of soft tissue injuries, and I think just the difference between this and other soft tissues that he's had, he's played a majority of his games in the midfield previous to this season, so he's had a higher load through the body. They've tried to move him forward to avoid exactly this, so this one probably comes at a little bit more of a cost because he hasn't done as much work or grunt work in the season to get to this point, so he's one that they're going to have to really look after and manage to get back in the back end of the season.
Given how flexible they've been with Dangerfield in terms of where they need him to sort of quell opposition strengths, how big is that he'll probably be out for at least 3 weeks?
Well, they've restructured their entire forward line around him, really, and of course they should. He's the best forward or one of the most impactful forwards in the competition at the moment, with his ability to change games when he needs to. He was instrumental in that victory over Collingwood, so they're going to have to put Ollie Henry probably back into that one out of the goal square position and see how the forward line restructures around that. Speaking of influential forwards, Jeremy Cameron, amazing today, 7 goals, back at his peak. Well, the best part of this was 5 of the goals were in the last quarter alone. So that surpasses any other run of goals he's had in a quarter in this season alone. His previous best was 4 in a game, so he's absolutely blown that out of the water. But his ability to know his kick, so that's a drop punt that moves beautifully. That's almost the similar position on the ground, and he knows that he has the distance in and around the corner snap. Goes back here, I love this, little kiss of the footy as he takes the mark as well for good luck. And then another one where he gets out the back and finishes it off beautifully, and that was right on the siren for his 7th goal. So he now sits 2nd on the Coleman with that 7-goal haul, with 27 goals, 2 behind Ben King as well, who does have a game in hand.
Absolutely he does. It's hard to believe that, isn't it? Well, 2025, Port Adelaide were hoping it would be the year that Ken Hinkley broke new ground with a premiership, but it seems he's setting records of a different kind.
Yeah, he is, and this is quite astounding. So the first 2 numbers on the page are the biggest losses that he's had in his coaching career. So the 91 points against Collingwood in round 1, the 90 points against the Bulldogs in round 8. This here sits as a 3rd loss in that category. So his top 8 losses as a coach, 3 of those have occurred in the first 10 rounds of 2025. So that's a pretty damning statistic. The other one, they scored a goal from 11% of their entries this evening, Port Adelaide. 39 points total is their 3rd worst total in 10 years. So it's not only defensively, it's attacking as well. So they're pretty damning statistics when you're looking at Ken Hinkley and his coaching CV.
This is a preliminary final side from last year. What does it say about them as a playing group? What sort of team is Josh Carr inheriting? Is it a development team?
I think when you look at their list, they still have stars sort of across all 3 lines. They've obviously got a little bit of depth missing, particularly in that forward line. So at the moment, it's really Mitch Georgiades or nothing when it comes to a key forward. Lord's still developing. He's shown signs this year, but they've had obviously Dixon move on. He's retired. Marshall is out, which was a big injury for them to have over the off-season. But I think that's the area of the ground that really needs to develop. They need to find another key forward, or Ollie Lord. They probably need to get a little bit more out of him than they're getting at this stage. But I think time will tell whether it's game plan, whether it's the way that they're using the ball at the moment, whether it's Ken, whether it's going to be Josh to step in and change that. So I think we'll be able to see over the next few weeks where that's going, and potentially if Josh Carr takes over the reins early, how does that play out?
Let's go to GWS and Freo, where we have our Saturday King, your Saturday King. You put the onus on Shea Bolton last week and he delivered.
I did. I just wanted to see him more through the midfield, so it was probably more on the coaching staff and the way that they allowed him to line up. But the pleasing part of this, 12 centre bounce attendees this afternoon or this evening, and his ability to apply pressure, which we haven't seen probably from him in a while in a Freo jersey, and hit the scoreboard 3 times, 24 disposals. He had a very good afternoon. The challenge I want to put to Shea Bolton, though, I want to see him do these in games that are on the line that they need someone to stand up, because often we see him do these in performances where they have the win or they're sort of up in games and things are going their way. I want to see him be able to turn the tide and be the player that can change things and put the momentum in the favour of Fremantle, because he can do it. So you want to see more of it, and more of it when the chips are down as well.
There was a lot to like about Luke Jackson's game as a number 1 ruck too. He was dominant throughout the whole clash.
He was. I think it's been a week of speculation for Luke Jackson, and he really showed that it's not only this that he can do, which is win the tap, get it to his prime movers in the midfield, but it's these things as well. He can win the ball himself. He can then drop back at stoppage and get the ball back and dispose of it beautifully going forward. He's a genuine unicorn when it comes to a ruckman, because he not only, as I said, wins the taps, wins the clearance, but he's just as valuable as a midfielder, really. Even though the size of him, you sort of look at him and you're like, there's no way that guy is a midfielder. The way he moves in there is fantastic, and I think he sort of put to bed this chat around whether he's still as good in the ruck as he is as a forward. I think this guy is a genuine ruck, and that's where they need to play him. Obviously, they've got the list squeeze at the moment with Darcy, who's out with injury, but Luke Jackson is your number 1 ruck at Fremantle.
At their best, both these sides, GWS and Freo, are scintillating, but they just haven't put it on the park consistently. Can you trust either of these sides to be contenders at the pointy end, or are they just too hot and cold?
No, I'm labelling them the box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get, especially with Fremantle. You don't know what you're going to get with Fremantle, whether they're at home or they're on the road. And GWS is starting to fall into that category. We saw a phenomenal effort for them against Geelong the week before, and then just didn't dish up a whole lot there this afternoon. And then we go back to the game against the Adelaide Crows, where they were just as disappointing. So, no, they've got my box of chocolates. We don't know what we're going to get.
Let's go to the MCG today, where Collingwood made it a perfect 10 over the Adelaide Crows. They haven't lost to them. Well, they're unbeaten since 2017 against them, an incredible record, which goes with their incredible record at Adelaide Oval. But they went in today undermanned against the 3-headed monster of Fogarty, Thilthorpe and Walker, with no big name key defenders, with Darcy Moore out. But it was a veteran who stood up.
It was Jeremy Howe. So he was brilliant in his ability to either play one-on-one or, as we see in that example, peel off his opponent, fly, take the intercept mark. He had 13 intercepts total. 4 of those were intercept marks. 17 disposals and 5 marks in general play. He was brilliant. He played a large chunk of the game on Darcy Fogarty and then the other part on Jordan Dawson, and he only conceded 1 goal for the entire match. So when they needed someone to step up, obviously Darcy Moore out. They've been using Darcy Cameron to slide back in that defensive role, but Riley O'Brien played a nice sort of negating role on him back there. So Howe was the man to stand up. Billy Frampton as well, can't go without a mention. He's been really good since that sort of premiership game that he played, and his ability to help out in that role and to take a key forward has been very impressive over the last few weeks.
As a Crows fan, you would be filthy with some of the missed opportunities that they had, because they definitely had a chance to take this game away.
Yeah, so this was midway through the 3rd quarter when they started to get some momentum. So we see a Curtin miss there, Rankin misses one out on the full, and then not too long after, from a similar spot on the ground closer into goal, another one out on the full. And the margins there so tight. And then they've wrestled back a bit of momentum at this point in the 4th quarter. Rochelle has this shot, just misses to the right. This is the next play. So the kick in from Collingwood goes down to a mark from Brody Mychek, and that's 52 metres out. He's gone back and slotted that. So that is just simply making the most of your opportunity. Yep. And if you assess this game in sort of one sentence, Collingwood made the most of their opportunities. The Adelaide Crows didn't. That's why Collingwood came out 10-point winners.
Well, good kicking is good footy, as they say. Let's have a look at what the Pies have to come, because you'd say that perhaps the hardest has already come.
Yeah, well, you were really keen to get this one in, Xander, to just prove how tough their run has been so far. But yeah, no, they do. They've put themselves in such a great position in the season. They've had the ability to rest players, go to Fremantle, get a win, and now this is their run coming up. So North Melbourne, Hawthorn at the G, Melbourne at the G. They've got the bye in round 14, St Kilda and West Coast, and you've got to put them in the top sort of 2 teams in the competition at the moment. They've earned that title with their defence. They've also earned it by taking games off teams that have probably been less prepared than they have, and they've been able to execute a game plan when other teams haven't been able to. So they are probably at the moment the premiership favourite.
We kicked off Sir Doug Nicholls' round in style in Darwin between Gold Coast and Hawthorn. It was the Suns that prevailed once again up in the top end. An incredible record that they have there. It begs the question, do they need to play there more often? But you were pretty intrigued about what happened in the ruck battle there, particularly with Josh Weddle and Ned Reeves.
Yeah, I was. So they took both teams took their sort of second ruck. So Ned Reeves got his first game of the year. Gold Coast brought in Ned Moyle, but that was to ruck alongside Jared Witts. So some of the numbers. So hit-outs when Weddle was in the ruck. So Weddle had to play that second ruck role because Gunston was out. So Chol had to stay in the forward line. So 2 hit-outs to 13 in that time when Weddle was in the ruck, 4 clearances to 11. Then you look at when Reeves was in the ruck, relatively similar statistics. Obviously, clearances still in Gold Coast favour. We know how good they are as a clearance team. So let's have a look at some of the footage here, though, of the exact examples of when Weddle was in the ruck against Witts. All of these are fourth quarter when the game's on the line. Just his ability, Witts, to move Weddle wherever he wants. And this is what happens when you have a ruck that is simply not a ruck and has to come in against a man that has played the entire fourth quarter. This ball goes inside forward 50. Now Ned Reeves comes into the ruck, gets this beautiful tap out to Josh Ward at the next centre bounce clearance. They go inside 50 and score a goal. So I think that's just to highlight the importance of, yes, at times you're going to have a second ruck that goes in there. We see Paddy Cripps do it for Carlton. We've seen Weddle do it multiple times. But Weddle is a key pillar to their game plan. He can play across all 3 lines, but I don't include the ruck in those all 3 lines. I think you want him around the ball, you want him forward, you want him back. Utilise him in that way. So they need to come up with another solution in there as their second ruck if they only want to go with that one ruck in the game, because Weddle, at an important time, couldn't step up. Not that I expect him to either, but that was a real game changer in the fourth quarter.
James Sicily probably had a night to forget off the half-back line, but you very cruelly picked out a couple of examples he'd really like to forget.
Well, it was Sicily the stepladder, wasn't it? Jed Walter got a nice ride on him early, and then the only thing worse than someone taking a hanger on you is then later in the game someone else taking a hanger on you, and this was Ben Long, and
wow.
He didn't get as good a ride, so I'm giving that probably less points on the sort of hanger scale, but interestingly, Damien Hardwick gave his opinion on this, and he gave the points to Ben Long.
Okay.
I think Jed Walter's grab was more of that traditional hanger. I'd give him the votes in this. What's your take,
Well,
Xander?
I think Ben Long was a bit destabilised there. I thought he did well to actually keep himself
But
upright.
the photo looks better. The photo looks better. He gets more of a sit, Jed Walter.
And it'll live on for that very reason,
That's
won't
it.
it? John Noble, he had a great game. He was probably the best game that he's had at the Suns. You could say he was best on ground. 1,000 metres gained, just like Bailey Dale, but he's really come along in this new role at the Suns.
Yeah, he has. And sort of looking at the game, you could go with Anderson, Rowell in the fourth quarter, especially Collins, and sort of looking at who you thought was the best on ground. But for me, it's been John Noble and Daniel Rioli. Their injection into this team and the way that Damien Hardwick has used them has been the real change this season to the Gold Coast Suns and the way that they move the ball and their game plan. So, as I said, the 13th player to get 1,000 metres gained. Obviously, Bailey Dale this evening was the 14th, but 36 disposals, and just a genuine point of difference in the Gold Coast Suns team are Noble and Rioli now.
Let's go to the Friday night clash between Carlton and the Swans. And we're going to start with the narrative that's been around the Blues all season, and it's reared its head again. Michael Voss spoke about it post-match. He said, in no uncertain terms, it's what pisses him off the most about this team at the moment, which is that they keep fading out in the second halves. What is it about this team that means that they just can't carry on for all 4 quarters of a game?
Yeah, well, if we look at the numbers, I mean, these are typically your sort of your KPIs that you'd have up on the board as a coach, your clearances, your disposals, your inside 50s, but they got owned around the contest. So clearances and contested possessions, not only did they get owned there, but the spread as well from the Swans. So uncontested possessions and uncontested marks. -13, -10, which means not only were they losing it at the coalface, they were then getting beaten from that point to spread. So they're areas of the game that they really need to tidy up. Their second halves now, they've gone in leading at halftime 5 times, and sorry, the 5th time this game, they've been leading at halftime and lost the game. So they're genuine concerns for Michael Voss and his team.
5 out of 6 losses leading at halftime is incredible. And you can maybe account for those stats. One thing you probably can't account for is what Isaac Heaney did to them all throughout the game, but particularly in the second half.
Yeah, well, it was a career high 38 disposals and an equal career high 18 contested possessions. He had 9 clearances, and the only blemish on his game were those 5 behinds that we see there. 2 goals, 5. He could have made this a legacy game almost with the way that he was kicking. But the thing that just stands out when you watch these highlights is how clean he is. So his ground balls, his ability to get onto the footy, and if he takes possession, he takes it on one grab, and then he can either get boot to ball or handball it out to a teammate in a better position. And it really was a fantastic game from Isaac Heaney, and he's getting the Goods O'Loughlin medal there for the Marn Grook match that takes place in Dreamtime every year, and he was much deserving to be the winner of that one.
On a wet night too, an incredible performance from Heaney. There was an incident early in the game. Aaron Francis came off with a concussion, and it was probably the most contentious point of the week after what happened in the West with Lockie Schultz and the umpires not stopping the game. What did you make of the handling of this situation?
Yeah, so I want to just roll the vision to start with. So this is the initial incident, and looking at that live, you can't really tell a whole lot of what's gone on there. Obviously, Francis has come out injured, but from live, you wouldn't really know if that's a head knock or what it could be from there. So we have a look as this plays out. So we've sped this up, and the time that this goes, this entire passage of play, we see the trainer come over to him there, and he's still on the ground inside forward 50. This is still playing out, the game's still going on. So it was 84 seconds between that initial incident and then when we eventually get the behind kicked. So this is where we see the ball tracking go in the area of Aaron Francis, who's still there in the screen with the trainer being helped now. And then this ball goes through for a behind, and we hear the comms from the umpire say that there's an injured player and play needs to stop. So my point on this is, at the moment, there's a lot of commentary around the standard of umpiring, and that's purely around their decisions, their ability to make decisions. That has nothing to do with this element as well. And I simply think we're asking the umpires to do way too much in the game. So we're expecting them to get every decision right. If they take their eyes off that to check on an injured player and miss a decision, well, guess what we're showing in this clip? We're showing the miss of the decision or the things that they're not getting right. So I think it has to be a collective effort here. They need to be able to work through a solution. Yes, player safety is at paramount, but umpires also, their paramount is to get their decisions right and make the decisions in the correct timing. But umpires looking at that live, we watched the first clip. How are you supposed to tell from that it's a concussion or it's an injury that's been sustained? So for me, it needs to be trainers at the ground, doctors at the ground that have the authority to tell someone to stop the game. It has to be players, if they're in the vicinity of an injured player that they can see. Darcy Moore last week talks about how they were unsure why it wasn't stopped. You have the ability to tell an umpire to stop the game. You need to take that as well. It's on everyone. Boundary umpires should have the ability to radio to a field umpire to tell them to stop the game if they've seen it. And same as goal umpires, if they see something like that. It needs to be a joint effort. You cannot solely put this on the umpires with all the heat that they are copying at the moment, saying that the standard of umpiring is not good enough. But hey, we're also going to add this to your plate of what you need to look out for.
We have the ARC concussion spotters already. Do you think, in an Essendon Celeste, that they need to be more assertive?
Potentially, if they can get a direct line. I don't know if they have a direct line to match day officials in the ability to then get that to the umpires like that to stop the game. And that's what we're kind of talking about here, the really proactive response to it. So there's something that needs to come of it, but I don't think we can solely put this on the field umpires to stop the game and see that there's an incident.
Speaking of head contact, we had a couple of MRO incidents. We'll start with Justin McInerney, who's copped a one-week ban for this bump on Jack Silvani. The MRO deeming that he elected to bump there, wasn't really contesting the ball, and that the impact was medium, which results in a one-match ban there. So Silvani wasn't concussed by the incident, which is why it's a one-match ban and not sort of three. He did actually go off after half-time, which sent a shock through the camp, but that was due to a groin injury. This is the big one, though. Joel Amartey's copped a 3-week ban for a late hit with only a minute 44 on the clock left on Jordan Boyd, which left him concussed after the game when he failed an HIA. That ball is well out of the picture. He wasn't contesting the ball. He's very much elected to bump, and he's copped him head high, 3 weeks straight away. Goodbye, Joel Amartey. We don't know whether they're going to challenge or not, but you'd suspect, given sort of the obvious nature of those two,
yeah.
Maybe McInerney has a case, but you think Joel Amartey is set for a holiday before they play.
Second one's a pretty ugly incident. Off the ball, bumps him, elects to bump, cops him higher concussion. You've got to cop your 3 weeks for that.
Now, thanks to our friends at AAMI, we'd like to remind everyone that the AAMI Clangers for Good is back for the 2025 AFL season. And this year, it isn't just open to footy clubs, it's for all AFL fans. So, if you've got a footy-related clanger, whether at home, at a game or at the club, AAMI want to hear about it. Please head to afl.com.au/AAMI Clangers for Good. Share your clanger and you could be in with a chance to share in $100,000. Not bad is that. Kate, let's have a look at the rest of the round here. We've got a few pretty good games coming up for the rest of the weekend. Richmond, North Melbourne will be very competitive. Brisbane, Melbourne, and then West Coast and St Kilda or Wallich, Marawa v Euroke. Talk us through these matchups. What do you make of them?
Well, Richmond, North Melbourne, there's a fair bit of pressure on North in that one. I think a lot of people are expecting them to get their first win at the G since 2017, but I don't think it'll be an easy beat at all. Richmond showing some really good signs. I'm looking forward to that clash to see the development of both of those sides pitched up against each other.
Now, before we finish tonight, it would be remiss of us not to mention that the football world is in mourning in many respects tonight. We've lost two of the great figures of our game over the last week, and we'd like to pay our respects to them. We'll start with Adam Selwood, who tragically lost his life today, and our hearts go out to the Selwood family. The father of two, a husband, a brother and a son, and just months after we lost Troy Selwood as well at the start of the year. He'll be remembered as a premiership star, a great clubman, as Trevor Nisbet, the former CEO, said today, one of the greatest clubmen that's ever come through the West Coast Eagles. It's an unfathomable loss for the Selwood family and gut-wrenching for everyone in our game. And then there's Robert Walls, one of the great figures in the history of VFL and AFL, a three-time premiership player, a premiership coach, key to the success of the Brisbane Bears in the early days, and a pioneer of hard takes as a media analyst. No one was harder, no one was fairer, no one was more perspicacious either than Robert Walls. Two men of the highest integrity in our game who will be sorely missed. Thank you for watching the round so far. We'll join you next week once again.